I want to do this video today because there are quite a few people around me that I really care about who seem to struggle a little bit when it comes to going out there and doing something for themselves. And whenever I see someone who's like still fairly relatively young, I'm 27, 28 years old this year, and I still think I'm young, right? And I think when you're young, you got to go out there and take risks. When you're in your 30s, I think early, mid 30s, that's where most people settle down, they get married to the love of their lives. And then they start thinking about family and kids and buying a house. And then that's where all the real world responsibilities stack on you. And not to mention your parents may also get older. And when your parents and grandparents get older, you got to take a lot of real world responsibilities to really be there to provide for them. You can't, lose that job that's paying you maybe $10,000 per month. You can't take that risk anymore. Let's just be real. So for me, when I was, I started my businesses, by the way, I run companies, and my current company, Sigma School, we are at around 80 to 100,000 US dollars per month. It's not the biggest company, but it is good enough for me to pay the bills and good enough for me to take very good care of my team members, who I really appreciate. Each and every one in my team now are people who I appreciate so much. But let me get back to the point. The point here that I want to really share was a lot of people around me that I really care about, they seem to struggle to take that step because somehow they're afraid. Somehow they're afraid that if they leave their jobs and, they may have tied a lot of their self-worth to their job and their salaries. I'm not too sure, but it seems like it's tough for them to take that step. But what I always tell them is just take that step, because if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? In a few more years, things are not going to be as easy as it currently is. Your friends are going to be making more money as well, which you probably will have a higher opportunity cost. What do I mean by opportunity cost? Right? When you're 24 years old, your salary is probably around $3,000 USD, $3,000, not USD, wherever you are, right? $3,000 maybe. But as you grow in your career, as you advance in career, you're going to start getting more and more salaries. 24, you may be making $23,000, but when you're 30 years old, you may be making $5,000. When you're 35 years old, you may be making $7,000, right? So what I'm trying to say here is health cost and, everything else, the family cost or whatever, those are separate, but we're talking solely on opportunity cost. It will increase as you age. And that makes it even tougher, because now if you're going to quit your job and do this new cool venture that you're thinking about, you are essentially giving up $10,000 per month, every month, if let's say that's your new salary. So if anything, I'd say when you're young, you got to go out there and take that risk, because when you're young, people don't judge you as much. You have more energy. That's a big one as well, right? Right now, today at 28 years old, which is honestly still quite young, I feel like the push that one needs to continue driving, the push that I have today is so different. Yes, I may be wiser. Yes, I may have more cash flow and more experiences and more case studies and more recognition under my belts. I've been featured on different press media outlets and the radio. We've got 20,000 followers on Instagram. We're now making $100,000 per month. We have some success stories, which is amazing, by the way. I wouldn't trade anything in the world for it, because these social proof are things that, that takes time to build. If you look at Coca-Cola, they are intangible assets. You check their balance sheet, right? Intangible assets is worth around, I think, $60 billion. And the reason for that is because to replace the recipe for Coca-Cola, it's arguably doable. It's probably out there online, you can find out, right? But what you struggle to replace will be things like their branding, their connections and their relationships that they have with different companies, their distribution channels, and whatever awards that they have or whatever recognition they have. Those are things that matter a lot. That's their brand equity. So I think that's just me trying to make a distinction in terms of the importance of stacking these assets and social proof and branding under your belt. And that's something that really takes time, right? So obviously when you're younger, it's going to be very difficult to do these things, right? And I have grinded my ass off in my early 20s to be able to build these things. I've seen a lot of my friends who, fresh out of university, they'll say things like, hey, you know what, I'm just going to get a few years of experience and then I'm going to start something when I'm 28, right? No, it's not going to happen. I've seen it happen again and again and again and again. Like literally 99% of all of my friends who said that to me when they were in their early 20s do not end up starting something when they're 28 because of all the reasons I mentioned above. So if you're one of those guys or girls who has the calling to do something for yourself, you should just go out there and do it. What's the worst you can lose? Honestly, what's the worst you can lose? You lose a few months of salary, but you learn so much. So when I was going on this journey, I was 24 years old, fresh graduate. I left my job in venture capital to go and learn how to code for around 6 to 8 months, around 7 months around there. I asked myself, what's the goal that I had? And I think back then my goal was to build a startup for the sweet recurring revenue, a SaaS. I thought it was easy, but it's not. It's not just coding, right? To build a SaaS, you need marketing, you need distribution, you need operation. There's so so many things to do, right? So when I did that, I was like, okay, worst best case, I build a startup and I make MRR forever. Worst case scenario, I can just get a job somewhere. That's kind of what I told myself. And the earliest goal that I have was, okay, while building this SaaS, I need to stay alive. So there are only two things I can do. I raise funding or I find some ways to make money. So I couldn't raise funding because I was still really new. And I guess the funding landscape back then was a bit challenging for me in Malaysia. So I was like, you know what, it's great. I'm going to bootstrap the shit out of this company. And that's how I got into providing education services, teaching people how to code, and also providing software services to companies. That's how I got into it. That's how I made my some cash flow in the early days, because without cash flow, basically you can't do anything. So it's really important to stack cash flow, because only with cash flow can you continue to fund whatever you want to fund. So I found a way to generate cash flow when I was younger. And I guess the question is, how much cash flow do you actually need, right? I did the math in my head. I think back then the entry level salary in Malaysia is like, what, freaking low. It was like 3,000, forgot, right? But I told myself I needed to make 1.5k ringgit, 1,500 ringgit, which is around 300 USD, 400 USD. That's what I told myself. And I did whatever it takes to just get that, because I knew that if I'm able to make 1,500 ringgit myself without relying on an employer to set my pay, I will eventually make it 150,000 ringgit per month. And I told myself as well that it's okay, right? Because even if I'm making 5,000 ringgit per month, which is what I was making in my previous job, even if I was making that amount, I had to be fixed to a location every day, and I had to take the train, and I had to do a lot of these things that I really didn't enjoy doing. But if I could have location freedom and time freedom, I really don't mind the small pay cut. So that's kind of how I think about things. Yeah, I'm not really good at rambling on the camera. I just realized this. I haven't done this in a long time, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say here. And I really just want to do these videos because I feel like there's so many wasted potential out there where people they just leave their talents on the table and they don't do it because they're afraid of taking the risk. Take that risk today. The later you wait, the scarier it gets, the more real world objective risk that you'll be facing. Do it today. You're 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 years old. There's nothing holding you back, honestly, right? Do it now. You may go hungry a little bit, but come on, a meal is like what, 10 ringgit, right? Or if you're from the US or something, then it could be more expensive. Then just move your ass to a cheaper country, right? You live in Bali for like $400 a month. You have no excuses. So yeah, just do it. I wish you all the best.